What's going on, guys? So, Deadpool and Wolverine has been in cinemas for about 2 weeks now. I've seen the movie 3 times, and honestly, I think I like it more on each viewing. It just really entrenches the experience, and I'm catching jokes and references to not just Marvel, but other properties as a whole that I didn't even catch on the first viewing. So, that's kind of why, even though I've already done a spoiler free review on my Instagram fan account, which I'll put the link in the description for that. I kind of just want to talk some spoilery details and get more into depth of what I liked and a couple things that maybe I thought they could do a little better with. That said, this is, as I just mentioned, a spoiler filled review. So if you haven't seen the film already, first of all, why not? And second of all, go see the movie, come back, and let's talk some spoilers. The first thing that I would like to point out is the meta narrative aspect of the plot. It's something that didn't really stick out to me quite as much on first viewing, but then seeing it a second time and then absolutely a third time, it really just began to become crystal clear what they were trying to go for with this film and the overall story. The Deadpool films as a whole haven't been the most complex from a storytelling standpoint, and this one honestly might be the weakest of the three in that regard. However, it more than makes up for it with a really smart meta narrative that's surrounding the whole Disney buying Fox and corporate mergers and all this stuff. If you really pay attention to the film, it's pretty obvious that the Time Variance Authority is kind of meant to symbolize Disney, trying to give Deadpool and the Fox characters another shot at redemption. And once you really recognize that aspect of the film, and another element that I'm going to get to later on that kind of ties back into this, it really becomes apparent that this movie's kind of meant to be both a parody as well as an allegory for this. I'm not really sure what the word is, but y'all probably know what I'm getting at. The whole aspect of merging and Deadpool, is there room for Deadpool in a mainline MCU? And it's elements, it's questions that they bring up in the movie, obviously much more under the radar. But if you've seen the film a few times and you are like me or a lot of the viewers watching this most likely, and you keep up with what's going on in Hollywood, it becomes very apparent that this is kind of what they were going for and the angle that they were trying to take. And I think it largely works. I've also got to say, the opening to this movie is freaking wild. It I don't want to go so far as to say it, but having seen it 3 times, I feel like I can comfortably say this might be not just one of the best openings to a comic book movie, it might just very well be a top 5 best opening to a movie. Um, Even just seeing the film a second and third time, I saw it a second time with my sister and another friend, and then I saw it a third time with my girlfriend. And each time I was taking somebody to this movie after I had already seen it, probably one of the top 3 parts I was looking forward to showing them was the opening scene because it is just so wacky and bombastic and just over the top in that gloriously Deadpool way. And I've seen a couple people kind of critique this element and say, well, isn't this degrading Logan? And I can certainly see where they're coming from for sure, especially when Ryan Reynolds had that whole video with Hugh Jackman at first saying, we're not going to touch Logan. We're not going to mess with anything that happened in that film. And the first opening of the scene, he's like, ha, forget that. And, digs up the grave and he realizes Wolverine's dead. And then the TVA shows up and he's just ripping like the bones from Wolverine's corpse and killing TVA agents with it. Like, it's awesome, but I see where people are coming from. For me, however, I think we've had just enough time past Logan to where we can really respect that for what it is and have some fun with it. If this had come out, say, 2019 or 2020 even, I could see maybe a lot more people feeling more mixed on it. That said, I just don't really find that it's that offensive. It's kind of just goofy fun. It doesn't really do anything to disrespect the character of that variant of Logan himself. And as we see later on in the film, he's the anchor being of the mainline Fox universe, and we get to see other characters such as Laura X/X-23 from that film. So I think it's fine. I think it is just really fun and wacky in that Deadpool kind of vibe. It's not that deep in my opinion. Going on to my next topic, the hunt for the Wolverines. The scene where Deadpool's like, well, you know what? I'm going to save my universe. Maybe the main anchor being of Wolverine is dead, but I'm going to go find me another one. And he's jumping through all these timelines and multiverses. It was awesome. I mean, I'm never going to say no as a Back to the Future fanatic over any scene that has the power of love playing in the background. And it's completely out of pocket, but it just works. And as for the cameos, I mean, I'm sure I'm going to forget some of these, but you get Short King Wolverine, which, aka comic accurate Wolverine. That was great to see. There's a Wolverine, the one where he's hanging on kind of that like X cross looking thing. I know it's from a comic. I don't know which one, and I don't believe I've ever read it. But, anytime you shout out the comics, that's awesome. But my favorite one was the Cavalrine, where it took me a hot second. Like, I swear, I was the last person the first time I saw this in the theater to pick up on it. But the scene where Deadpool goes to that timeline and he's like, oh, this ripped Wolverine cleaning his motorbike. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then he turns around and it's Henry Cavill. Like, my whole theater on the first viewing was going absolutely insane. And I think I called it before he mentioned, we're going to treat you better than these down the street. Like, I knew it by then. I can't remember when the moment was where I was like, holy cow, that's Henry Cavill. But yeah, once I figured it out, I was like, no way. Like, I knew there were rumors that he could show up as a variant of Wolverine. I had heard that a couple months before its release, but I honestly was kind of shocked they were able to pull it off and do it as well as they did. Do I think he could become the main Wolverine in the MCU? I don't really know. There's a possibility. I mean, the fan reaction from what I can tell to that one scene was really cool, and he definitely looks the part, but we'll have to see what Feige and crew have in store for that. Speaking of Wolverine, obviously, Hugh Jackman back as Wolverine is amazing, and I think it's another great send off for the character. I mean, it sounds weird to say that two different versions of the same actor playing a character can work when it's supposed to be a send off, but I think it does. Logan was meant to be more along the lines of a swan song for the character. It was meant to be something that I'm not really sure what the word is, but I guess you could say it's essentially meant to be a more somber and emotional ending. Whereas with Deadpool and Wolverine, this version of Hugh Jackman's character, it's much more, I guess, finding his place in the universe. It's not really a send off because I've heard rumors that he could show up in Doomsday and Secret Wars, and I honestly absolutely believe it because why not? Even heard rumors say he might stay around in the MCU as that Wolverine. While I find the latter maybe hard to believe, I don't think it's the last time we're going to see this character. So it's not really a send off so much as trying to find yourself. And I think that element really works. I know the past decade or so, a lot of Hollywood movies and, legacy sequels like The Last Jedi, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, The Flash, and the list can go on and on and on for sure of these broken, beaten down heroes from our childhood that have to go back in for one last fight and realize that they haven't lost everything that they thought they did. And, it's definitely a common trope, but here I think it really works. And it's Wolverine's character arc that really brings the emotional element to that film. And it makes you care. And honestly, I didn't expect to care about this version of Wolverine. I'll put it this way. Because you have at least like 7, 8 movies plus of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. And, like I've said before, I don't see everything from X-Men to Dark Phoenix being in the same timeline. I just don't. I think it's two separate ones, but they're close enough to where you feel like you're watching the same character progress throughout the last couple decades. For this one, I was shocked that in a span of 2 hours, they made me care just as much for this version of Wolverine as they did in throughout 20 years plus of Hugh Jackman's run in the original films. It was just, I think it really came down to great writing, and he really, like I mentioned earlier, brings the emotional art to the film. Also, the suit. I mean, I love my boy Wolverine. I got like this, it's definitely more comic accurate than movie accurate, but I love the suit, love everything about Wolverine. So ever since I saw the set photos of him wearing the official yellow and blue suit, I was like, heck yes, let's go. This is what I've been waiting for. And my gosh, does it work? I mean, realistically, the scene in the theater where Madonna's like a player, like like a prayer starts playing, and you just see Wolverine and Ryan and Deadpool walking up there, and then slow motion, he just takes that cowl and puts it on. My whole theater opening night was going nuts, and I loved it. But not only was the suit amazing, it tied into the overall plot. The whole idea about how he refused to wear the suit despite his fellow X-Men members trying to get him to wear it. And then once they get killed off and he blames himself for not being there to save him, he decides to wear the suit because of the memories and to honor their legacy. I thought that was so brilliant. And I don't think there's certainly things about this film you can nitpick and elements you could pick apart if you wanted to. But I just think that's going to be one story arc that or one piece of the plot, I guess you could say, that I don't think anyone's going to have any beef with whatsoever. It was done to absolute perfection, in my opinion. Talking about the cameos, my gosh, they were awesome. And whenever anyone brings up the cameos in this movie, people like to say, well, this should have been what Multiverse of Madness was. And I would have to agree with you. They found a way to give you a bunch of cameos, such as Channing Tatum's Gambit, or Blade, or Jennifer Gardner's Elektra, and they found a way to not just give you these cameos as fan service, but really tie them into the overall plot, which I thought was brilliant. For those of you who didn't know, I'm sure a lot of y'all already do, but Channing Tatum as Gambit was such a cool moment because not only have I, as a huge Gambit fan, waited to see him be done justice on the big screen, but Channing Tatum's been gunning for the role of Gambit most of my entire life. So to see him finally get this role and the jokes that he makes about this and the joke other people make or other characters in the film make about him, it just, it really works. Wesley Snipes is Blade. I'm going to be honest, I have yet to see Blade Trinity, but I've seen the first two, and I props to my boy Wesley Snipes. He pulls off the role perfectly, and if not for him, yeah, I don't want to say we wouldn't have gotten the MCU, but I could see it being a lot different. But yeah, he's great in the role. I love the line where they're in the Honda Odyssey, and he goes, I can't remember the exact wording, but he's like, I'm the only Blade, and there's ever only going to be one Blade, or something like that, and Deadpool's just like, well, I thought that was perfect in my opinion. And then Jennifer Gardner's Elektra. Honestly, recently I've watched the Deadpool, or not Deadpool, but Daredevil film with Ben Affleck for the first time. Gotta say, wasn't my absolute favorite comic book movie, and I say this as somebody that loves the character of Daredevil. That said, it was a decent film, and I actually did kind of buy into his romance with Jennifer Gardner's Elektra. And so seeing her back in the film, or back in Deadpool and Wolverine, I thought that was just a ton of fun. I thought she did well in the role. Wasn't my favorite cameo. Again, I'd say that was either Channing Tatum's Gambit or Blade, but it just worked. Yeah, Laura X-23. I think out of all the characters, she's the one that really ties the best into the plot. Because in a way, the brilliance of this was in Logan, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is the one that saves Laura and ends up dying. In this film, while Laura doesn't necessarily die that we know of, at least not on screen, she's the one that really ends up pulling this version of Hugh Jackman out of the rut that he's in, helps him to find meaning again. And I just thought that was a really kind of poetic element of the story that I really appreciated. Last but not least for cameos, I gotta talk about that Chris Evans cameo. That was awesome. I mean, I had a feeling because, again, I listened to a lot of the plot leaks and rumors and whatnot. So when I was hearing rumors that Chris Evans would come back, I was like, he's going to be Human Torch. And then a lot of the leaks and rumors were kind of like, oh yeah, he's going to be playing Human Torch, but it's going to be done as a misdirect. So I saw it coming. But my gosh, people in my theater went insane when he goes, oh, he's going to say it, Avengers. And then Chris Evans is like, flame on. Like, I saw it coming, not going to lie, but I think if you don't keep up with leaks and rumors, it's going to be a huge misdirect for a lot of the audience members. Like, it was just so much fun. I loved it. The way he dies, too, is just absolutely... it's messed up, it kind of reminded me in a way of like John Krasinski's Reed getting killed by Wanda in Multiverse of Madness, except I felt like it was done so much better in terms of like shock value and actually feeling earned. And then I'll go ahead and mention it now. He has the post credit scene of where Deadpool's saying that he mouthed off to Cassandra Nova and said all like these horrible, atrocious things that YouTube would definitely not let me repeat here. And all this time, you're like, no, there's no way. Deadpool was just making that up. And I will say, the post-credit scene where Deadpool's like, let's rewind the tape here, and you see that he said all of that and so much worse. That was brilliant. I mean, as far as post-credit scenes go, sure, I would have liked to seen something that tied into the bigger MCU, but that might be one of the funniest post-credit scenes in the entire MCU, if not the funniest. Like, it was just, you know, Chris Evans goes from the Boy Scout Captain America to maybe ending his entire MCU run saying that. And I don't know, it just worked for me. And speaking of what worked for me, one of the things that I really enjoyed was that there's such a respect in this movie for what came before. It doesn't try to subvert expectations. It doesn't try to just dump on other films or characters. It'll poke fun at it for sure. But unlike so many other films these days, it seem like they're always trying to shake up the status quo and they're like, hey, let's just forget the past and forge our own legacy, like She Hulk. But, anyways, back to Deadpool and Wolverine, they really never take things far enough to where I feel like it just becomes a mockery or even just a hardcore parody of things. They know people love the MCU. They love a lot of these characters, even the ones like Gambit. Well, not Gambit per se, because we haven't seen him in live action, played by Channing Tatum, but, Wesley Snipes' Blade, X-23, and they find ways, again, kind of like what I mentioned earlier, to incorporate them into the story in a meaningful way that feels earned and that gives them payoff. One of the things that I think really works, and something that I called on my multiple viewings, was the whole idea of the cameos, a lot of them at least, being in the void is because their universe was destroyed. No one really gave them a chance. There's really no place for them. And they kind of say that in the film. And I'm thinking about the characters and I'm like, yeah, nobody really remembers Wesley Snipes' Blade. A lot of my friends that are huge Marvel fans haven't seen it. And, when Black Panther came out, everyone was like, it's the first black superhero. And a lot of people were like, hey, what about Blade? So he's one of those that I just feel like's been forgotten. And then obviously we have Ben Affleck's Daredevil that I feel like no one has said a word about since the Netflix Daredevil show came out. And I just found like the element of giving them one more chance, helping them to, get the ending that they deserved or that they never got in the film. And I just thought that was such brilliant symbolism since so many of those cameos were from films and franchises that really never amounted to anything and that a lot of people forgot. So I really enjoyed that. And then you get to the ending of this film, the third act, and I could see some people feeling like the Deadpool variants kind of come out of nowhere. And I definitely would agree with you to a certain degree. But it was so much fun. I mean, this entire movie, I feel like it was kind of like a Deadpool comic come to life. I would say more so than the first two, because if you've read any of the Deadpool comics, they are just so wacky, over the top. There's Deadpool variants. There's just, I mean, absolute absurdity and wackiness that would put things like Looney Tunes to shame. In fact, I guess you could kind of say Deadpool is maybe like Looney Tunes for adults. Questionable. But anyways, back to the topic. Yeah, so you get to the ending and like they're having to like Deadpool and Wolverine are fighting off like 8,000 variants of himself. You got the Lady Deadpool played by Ryan Reynolds' wife Blake Lively, which was really cool. Kid Pool that was played by his 10-year-old daughter or something like that. And there's a bunch of other ones that I'm sure I'm missing that I don't know the names of the actors that played him, but Cowboy Pool, Baby Pool, obviously Dog Pool, that's a total standout. And it just works. Like, I'm telling you, it was so wacky and just so out of pocket for the rest of the film. But then again, it's Deadpool, and Deadpool is wacky, and Deadpool is out of pocket. And I loved it. I don't know what to say. I was just geeking out at all the variants, head pull. The list could go on and on. I'm sure new rock stars, if y'all follow that channel, they're gonna have a field day, or probably already uploaded their video, but they're sure they had a field day going and seeing this movie multiple times and trying to name and point out all the Deadpools in this scene. But it was just, nothing screams Deadpool like Deadpool and Wolverine taking out a whole armada of variants of Deadpool to Like a Prayer. I'm just saying. Objective truth. Speaking of, an action scene like that, I think this probably has some of the best action in the entire MCU. And I don't say that just because it's bloody and there's limbs, guts, gore, all that stuff. That certainly helps and contributes. But at the same time, I feel like it works because it's just really well choreographed and it's close up, it's brutal. They're just really again, going back to the Deadpool variant fight at the end of the film, or even just the Deadpool and Wolverine fights we see, a lot of them are done with one shots, and they just find really creative ways to film the action that I really thought was awesome. And I know I've mentioned the song at this point like 1,000 times already, but Madonna's Like a Prayer and NSYNC's Bye 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 that played at the opening of the film, those two songs, I don't think any film before or after this movie could use either of those songs as well as they did. I mean, Like a Prayer plays like nonstop for the last 25 minutes, but it just works and it's just adrenaline fueled and awesome. And did I not love it? And Bye 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 is it's just so ridiculous to play during a scene where Deadpool's ripping bones out of the corpse of Wolverine and killing TVA agents with it. But again, it works. And I got to say, Deadpool's got some moves. That's all I'm going to say. Deadpool has got some moves. I need to take dancing lessons from him. But yeah, other than that, I think the only thing that I kind of wanted to point out that I haven't mentioned yet are the ending credits. I already said the post credit scene, but as somebody that grew up, who's like some of my first films were the original X-Men movies, the Fantastic Four, Fantastic Four 2. I have such nostalgia for those films. Again, not all of them are great. They certainly haven't aged well to a certain degree, but the original X-Men came out in 2000, the year I was born. So my whole life, I've never known really any other X-Men property than those films. Those are kind of what got me into the X-Men lore, to Marvel Comics. And they may not have been the first superhero films I ever watched, but they really shaped me into the fan that I am today. They really contributed right up there with like Spider-Man 2, Batman 1989, the Avenger films. And so when I'm watching the post or the credits and they start playing, let me actually look up this song real quick because I cannot for the life of me remember it. But oh yeah, Good Riddance by Green Day. There we go. When that starts to come on and you just see the behind the scenes photos and clips from X-Men, Fantastic Four, all this stuff, and you just see Hugh Jackman holding like Wolverine action figures, and everyone just seems like they're having a great time. It was just bittersweet. And watching this film as a whole, but especially just that particular montage at the end, I almost felt like as a fan, things had come full circle. Like me as a kid watching X-Men, the Fantastic Four 2005 film, just all of that. And then seeing, an obviously mature Deadpool and Wolverine flick that really brings everything from my childhood full circle and then shows us montage at the end of both the good, the bad, and the straight up ugly films like Dark Phoenix. It kind of made me nostalgic, not gonna lie. And I have my problems. Again, you can look at my Instagram fan page, and I've reviewed every single X-Men film. There's some that I love, a lot that I think are all right, and some that I absolutely hate. But at the end of the day, I'm nostalgic for a good majority of them. I think the actors did a really good job, and I just felt like it was such a nice homage to really just that early 90s and 2000s era of Marvel films. In fact, you could even say this movie is the Avengers Endgame for that era of comic book movies. I mean, it really gives that satisfying payoff to X-Men, to Daredevil, to Fantastic Four. maybe it doesn't, give every character that, oh my gosh, that was a perfect way to conclude things. But they bring them back for one last rodeo. They're like, hey, we still acknowledge you. Maybe a lot of fans have forgotten about you, but here you go. Here's this last chance to shine. And I thought it worked. I think a lot of things about this film work. And honestly, I'd love to go see it a fourth time. I don't know if I'll get around to that or not, but yeah, it really was such a fun experience in the theater. And I'm honestly not going to lie, it might be, and I didn't want to say this on first viewing. I thought it, but I didn't want to say it. It might be top three MCU with maybe potential to be the best MCU film. I'd have to think about that, and there's certainly several that I'd have to rewatch, like Endgame, No Way Home, Winter Soldier, those kind of films, before I could really definitively say that. But I think if not top three, definitely top five, and I feel comfortable in saying that. But anyways, that's all I got for today. Let me know what you all thought in the comments down below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What was your favorite part in this film? And do you think they're going to make a new Deadpool? Also, will Disney actually let Hugh Jackman play Wolverine until he's 90? That's all I got for today, guys. Take care.